Hi, I'm Nancy Daniels, here to present the results of the first impressions process for Mound City, Kansas. Weir, Kansas asked for first impressions, and Mound City agreed to be its partner. We like the cities to be far enough away so that they're really unfamiliar with each other, and you really fit the bill. I trained the visitors about the visit and the survey in September and took photos on that same day. 3 visitors came from Weir in October in one car. And then we hope that from this video recording, you will take the opportunity for further discussion to create action plans out of these results. First impressions is very helpful to help us remind you what your city looks like to someone else. We've seen some pretty extraordinary outcomes when people see the fronts of their buildings and realize what it looks like to fresh eyes. They don't have to be told what it looks like. Just seeing a photo of it helps them to evaluate that. The first thing that I've seen from every first impressions process, I've done 60 of them now, is that you realize how proud you are of your town, that you've got a great town and you've done a lot of good things. Um, the next thing we hope that you'll notice are a few things that you'd like to change. We're unlikely to tell you anything about your town that you don't already know, but hearing it from somebody else just makes you confirm that you're right in that perception. And you may well hear something that you do not agree with, and that's okay. This is a one-time perception, and we may not be correct. That visitor or my observation may not be true for you. Just consider it for what it is and use the feedback that's helpful and reject that that's not. First of all, I'd like you to consider open your mind to a new perception about where you live. Ben Winchester, a senior research fellow from the University of Minnesota, has done extensive research about rural. And he says we need to change our narrative, change what we say about narrative. Rural, like everywhere else, is changing. Don't talk about it dying, but changing. Brain gain, the idea that people 30 to 49 years old choose to move back to rural places is a, quote, new trend that has been happening since the 70s. We just hadn't documented it until recently. And it's important to note that people research a number of places before they move to a rural town. So when we tell you about the importance of your social media presence, that's why we're saying it. Consider that rural is in the middle of everywhere. It's not in the middle of nowhere. We all live one place, we work another, and we play another. As long as we have transportation and the internet, everything is accessible to you. As I speak, I'm in Topeka, Kansas, but the job that I chose was an hour away in Manhattan, Kansas. So just being in the presence of jobs doesn't mean that it's any different for an urban citizen than it is for people in Mound City. Ben tells us that 46%, almost half of Kansas households moved between in a 4-year period. And I think the implication is that that's not unusual. He's done surveys of newcomers to rural areas. If I'm not mistaken, I think those rural areas were in Nebraska, even closer to us than Minnesota. And those people who came back, those brain gainers, they listed a lot of reasons. A simpler pace of life, the safety and security of living in a small town, affordable housing, outdoor recreation, quality schools. Guess what? A job wasn't even in the top 10 reasons. So think about the ways that you can work together, not only in your community, but with other communities around you, to attract newcomers and create the quality of life that everyone desires, especially those in your own town. Ben tells us, and boy, this has been a revelation to me. I grew up in a small town. I grew up on the farm, and the small town that I related to was Woodbine, a town that at its highest was probably 200 citizens. And I didn't know everybody, but I thought that was because I was a kid. And it turns out that we don't know each other in our towns. I've seen it in my grant workshops. I've seen it in your first impressions meetings. You may be small, but you don't know each other. So let's invite each other to get together as frequently as possible. One idea that Ben talks about is inviting people, only the newcomers to a town, to a newcomers meeting. He says in those meetings, they look around and say, I thought I was the only new person here. And it just creates a sense of camaraderie and kind of changes everyone's minds about what's going on in your small town. He notes that we are our own worst enemies. We really have to monitor what we say to others, visitors, or even if you don't think that you'll ever see them again, you don't know how what you say has impact on others. We say these things all the time. You have to live here 20 years to be an insider. Well, don't say that. It's not true. And don't act like it either. And I can reflect back on so many audiences that's true on, including your workplace or your any place else. Some people make a big splash in their first year. Now, something for us to pay attention to is the large majority of homes are owned by baby boomers and older. In fact, 30% of the homes, almost 1 in 3, are owned by people who are over 75 years old. And if you contemplate what happens in those homes, you know, they consider that change they made in 1980 is brand new, and the next owner thinks it's a rundown home. If you're lucky, they move out promptly. What we'd like to be thinking about is people transitioning out of those great big 4-bedroom homes that they once needed and moving into retirement housing, similar to the condo I'm speaking from as I talk here in Topeka, Kansas. My husband and I moved to a 2-bedroom unit with maintenance-free yards. We were sick and tired of being chained to our yard. And if it was 1 story, I would like it even better. So consider thinking about housing for people like those 30% who are over 75 rather than and freeing up those houses quickly. And people my age and older, consider making that move before your kids have to move you. If you want to hear more about Ben's comments, he's been our guest twice, and the most recent was more than almost 2 years ago. So let's look at the data for Mound City, Kansas. The 2010 estimate said, the 2010 census said that you had almost 700 citizens. And wow, what a change you've made in the next 8 years. Now, those are census estimates. It will be interesting to see what the new census data says. The median household income is $35,000, a little less than Kansas's average. In black are the Mound City data, and in red are the Kansas data. You have a higher than Kansas average of high school graduation, and 22% of your population is college educated with a 4-year degree. Your median age is only slightly higher than the Kansas rate, and your poverty rate is higher. Probably because of that nice lower cost of living. So we ask our visitors to go check out your website before you before they come to town. And here's what they said. They thought it had good information. It reflected well what they saw, nice history pieces and articles. And here's my comments in italics. Many of the articles are dated, and if they're still current, at least change the date so that it looks like it's well maintained. There are 4 articles here in the middle: arts and crafts, businesses, Lynn County Fair, and the special events. And the only link that was active when I visited this site in January was the Lynn County Fair. This is your Facebook page. It may look different than you're used to because it's in dark mode. And on January 26th, the last post was January 13th. Facebook, these are all pages that show that they're from Mound City, Kansas. And there's not as many as I see in lots of areas. That might be something you want to work on as a community, something that's possible for each one of you as businesses to create a better online presence. So we ask our visitors to just drive through for 5 minutes and see what they see. Now, mind you, I'm not in their car, so I don't know what exactly they're looking at, but I do my best to kind of document the same things that they might be talking about. They found it to be very picturesque coming from the east. They almost missed the welcome sign. The sign from the west is more visible. Very nice homes on entry into town, many businesses and good traffic downtown. They commented on the beautiful flowers that they saw in October. There were mums everywhere. Now, mind you, I was there 6 weeks earlier, so my photos won't show the mums. But they noticed them and they commented on them often. So that extra little bit of effort is really worth it. They noted that your buildings are older, but in good condition. And I would add to that, older is not a bad thing. We love those legacy buildings. Most buildings had signage and were well stocked. We ask visitors to go into the stores, but honestly, during the pandemic, we saw a decrease in the amount that they were willing and able to actually go into stores, both because your stores might have been closed more often than they would have been, but also because of their reluctance to do it. And they talked about business owners. We asked how they're approached by the business owners. And they noted that some business owners were shy, but they were talkative once they approached. So I'm going to give you a little quiet to reflect on what you're seeing here in these photos of downtown. These are really amazing assets to your community, these old buildings. And I will tell you, one of the things that I have a real desire, I have a frozen need for loft living. And so I was pleased to hear that some of your upper stories are being used as loft living. We really noticed that the character of the businesses and the downtown changes when loft living. Beautiful buildings. This was late afternoon, probably even after 5 o'clock or approaching 5 o'clock. You know, one thing I would note, if you've ever been to a town where they're really paying attention to clean windows, I think about Lindsborg. And Lindsborg really proved to me the difference that clean windows can make, those sparkly clean windows. It's an opportunity for entrepreneurship. If some kids in town or somebody who needs a little income would take that up as a business, because it sure makes your downtown amazing. We asked the visitors to look for benches, trash receptacles, Wi-Fi, public restrooms. And, you know, I remember at my first meeting saying that you don't have public restrooms downtown. And the truth of that matter is we really don't expect that. They know to go into the city hall or to the quick shop to access a restroom. It's not something that happens. I can name on one hand the number of cities I've been to that do have downtown public restrooms. Now, Wi-Fi is another thing, though. If you have Wi-Fi availability, make that known to people. It's a very welcoming characteristic. And I'm going to talk to you later in some resources that I love. Two gals named Becky and Deb with Save Your Town. And they talk about ways to make your Wi-Fi seamless so that your business can share the Wi-Fi up and down the street with others. And it's just one of those nice things that makes your town seem progressive and welcoming. Now, I can see benches. I can see trash cans in that picture. I can see where the buckets of mums are going to go. Lots and lots of downtown buildings. You are blessed with those, and I suspect that's why you're growing. We kind of like to see, I mean, it's discouraging sometimes when so many buildings are empty, but if we know that they're for sale and for rent, why that's more likely to encourage people to take you up on the offer. And again, Becky and Deb have some resources for filling empty buildings that I think you might really be interested in. Some good ideas. We have a category called other retail shopping. And in my training, I always tell them, well, usually in most small towns, there's downtown, that main street, and then there's the highway that goes past it. And I would have called these businesses the other retail shopping, but it's not at all unusual that people will use something else to talk about this, but we want to see what it looks like on that other space. And I seldom take pictures of Dollar General, but I wanted to capture the fact that you had a year-round sign that tells about the Sugar Mound Arts and Crafts Festival, which I think is great. So we've got KDOT data that's fairly recent. It's within the last 2 years for Mound City. And it shows just how many vehicles travel by on these two highways through your city. You are really blessed with access. And we ask about industrial parks and commercial areas, and this is not a strong point of first impressions. And honestly, it's, but this is what they said. They did not see a defined area, but they did see areas on the edge of town where an industry could locate. But as I started to say, a drive-by is not how industry will find you. As long as you have yourself listed in the right place, that's the thing that you need to pay attention to. Now, here's why this is important, though. You need to know that entrepreneurs who choose to start their small businesses are responsible for every year for well over half of the new jobs that are created in the United States. And we've learned more than ever this year that global marketing makes your town accessible to purchasers all over the world. And so, again, at the end of the presentation, I'm going to talk to you about the First Friday call that I host for K-State Research and Extension. Just this month, we heard from the Small Business Association, who is working to help businesses transition from one business to another. And an idea that he said they are working on is the idea of helping business owners who might want to transition out of their business to be matched up in a kind of a match.com with people who want to live in small communities and need a place to start. So that was an exciting concept to us. Healthcare services are important. And they saw that you had the Community Health Center of Southeast Kansas with 2 physicians available, but otherwise people travel to Fort Scott or Kansas City for dentists and optometrists, and that's not a problem. So the recommendation is, though, they did not notice the pharmacy, but it's there. They did not see any long-term care, and it's my understanding that you don't have any. That's not a problem. It's just a fact. If it's a problem for you, why change that? But one of the recommendations I'm going to make to you at the end is the fact that when you're making your town visible for others who might want to join you in Mound City, add a healthcare tab to your city website. And the thing that I've seen in small towns that I just love is add travel distance to those sites. And anybody would realize that I've got a good car. And if I were in Overland Park, Kansas, it might take me 20 or 30 minutes to get to that nearest hospital with the traffic. So think about a healthcare tab that talks about how many minutes it takes to get to the various healthcare assets. Housing. Again, we know that people are going to come for affordable housing, and truthfully, there aren't very many small towns that have, and you don't either, have very many houses that are available. So we do want to make them as, just make sure that it's a great place to live and think about that housing issue separately. So they noticed very nice homes with clean yards and some new construction, not many for sale signs. They heard about apartments above shops on Main Street. And we really like to hear this and encourage this. I asked them to stop in at City Hall. And the best that I think that the city clerk can hope for is to have a list of landlords that tell people what's not necessarily what's available, because that's so impossible to keep up, but just a list of landlords that would rent to them. Variety of houses, maybe that lot that's available to build on. So here's the data for housing in Mound City, Kansas. It occasionally happens, and you were one of them, that you're, according to the census documentation, you're right on spot with Kansas housing. Your owner-occupied housing is much higher than Kansas's percentage. Your family households, this surprised me a little bit, were less than the Kansas average. I think that families or households with children under 18 in them bode very well for the population of the schools. And it's great when you can bring young families into your communities. So what about those schools? Here's the information we found on schools. And by the way, it's completely appropriate and acceptable that visitors would visit with people in City Hall. And so if it sounds like they're getting inside information or something that wasn't available to them online, they can talk to City Hall, they can talk to a passerby on the street, they can talk to a business owner, anybody they want to. about their perception of the town for some information. I didn't catch it, but they saw that the high school has a greenhouse, which sounds like a neat asset. And this is a picture of the front page of the school district website. Now you guys are responsible for me finding a really good example. I Googled Mound City schools and found Mound City, Missouri. And I find this to be an exceptional instance of what I would love to see in a school district website. Because you want to be thinking about the fact that potential students are also an audience for your website, not just parents who want to know when the basketball game is or when the grade cards are coming out, but people who are strangers to town. And right there on the first page, these scroll by very quickly. Lots and lots of different pictures of kids of all ages. They have right on the first page, what about us? About us. Why should you come to Mound City Schools? And these were what they chose. I've seen some good examples from schools like our a large percentage of our teachers grew up in this district and they came back because they love our schools. Or they don't have to be data related. They can be about the fact that our students are exceptional in band and love the government teacher, love the government classes, and every year they excel in debate. Whatever you want to share, but tell us why you love your schools. You've got a lot to love here, don't you? Now, I was a little vague, several months later as I put this together, what the high school is being used for at this point, but it is a beautiful building. Childcare is not a place that we are good at finding childcare. It's not even particularly desirable that you would have childcare all that visible to people. I'm not denigrating the fact that this nice sign exists, but it's just not important that people be able to identify where childcare is. But they probably heard from the city clerk that there were 3 licensed in-home childcares. Here's the data from Lim County about your county data. It doesn't mean that this is available in Mound City. And the truth of the matter is, this is hard to quantify because sometimes people will take their kids to the city where they're working and leave them in childcare there. But what the data show on for the county is that you have quite a bit less childcare available than is potentially needed. And while this isn't a strong indicator for us to see as a first impressions, it's a really important thing for people who want to work and need to work. And so we need to know about childcare. It's also a really important thing for the kids themselves. High quality childcare is really about early education. And it's a very strong indicator of how well kids are prepared for school. So we need them to be high quality as well. So the Childcare Aware would be very interested in helping any community create a plan for improving the access to quality care in your community. Faith and religion, they saw 5 or more churches. They felt like they were well kept. They didn't see evidence of faith-based community services. However, they learned that some of those buildings are no longer used for worship, but for other faith-based services. Visitors did not observe civic organizations, but they learned in conversation about the VFW, the American Legion, and the Masonic Hall. They did not see any evidence of civic organization activity, and often we don't unless there's a sign out on the particular day that we were there. An observation here is that your senior center meets at Bunker Hall, and I often notice in small towns that the senior center is where all the cars are. Public infrastructure, this is all the infrastructure away from downtown. The comments that visitors made included good streets. Street signs are adequate and readable. Notice more houses in disrepair off of Main Street, closer to downtown. We like to see the library being pointed out. I would tell you that one of the things that we always hope will happen because of first impressions is that citizens will be empowered to take action. You know, maybe a citizen, I don't know, you've got a wonderful street department and maintenance department, but who knows, maybe a citizen would go out there and prop up that street sign. The staff at the City Hall were extremely helpful and welcoming, and they noticed that you were friendly and knowledgeable, very proud of your town. We love that. Lots of info, and it was nicely arranged. This is not a strength of first impressions, but it's important for your town that you have a good volunteer fire department and an adequate police force. I put this in here because your towns have taught me how important it is to have adequate training and equipment for your volunteer fire departments. One group noted that when their volunteer fire departments got the training and the air equipment that they needed, their ISO classification went up to the extent that every household in that town had decreased their fire insurance costs by $300 a year. And so I just put that out there to make sure that you're supporting your volunteer fire department with the equipment that they need. Beautiful library, friendly staff, nice and clean with lots of windows, and they saw more mums outside. We love to see this kind of public art and the indication of activities happening that makes it fun for not just you, but everybody to come to Mound City. Great sports complex. We saw two ballparks and two parks and a ballpark with a paved walking trail. You heard it, those brain gainers want the opportunity for outdoor recreation, and so this is important. They saw benches and exercise stations and a nice play area. It's hard to believe this was once the pool house. You've grown out to the point that you couldn't have the pool there. Your visitors told me, your leadership group told me that you're very well known for this arts and crafts event. You're also known for a lake, which is not apparent on your city website. Again, that recreation that people are looking for. They saw an old time village, which would be great to visit and promote after this COVID episode is over. And they saw that you're proud of the Linn County Fair, and the lake would be a good attraction. It's typical that there actually isn't a visitor center, but they noted that City Hall and the county courthouse have a lot of good information. What would bring you back? Well, they ate lunch at Garrett's Barbecue and they highly recommended it. And they visited the coffee house, but apparently they didn't buy any coffee. But they would like to go back and try some coffee. Friendly people, the most positive observations. I always think these are some of the most important comments in the whole report. Friendly people, a good variety of businesses, good sports complexes, parks, really proud of their downtown appearances. Everyone we talked to was passionate about their town. Lots of history. You know, us baby boomers I've been noticing the people in my age group made it a thing during the pandemic to travel to small towns. And yours would certainly be one of those opportunities, but give them, make them aware of the opportunities to spend money while they're in town too. And COVID is just a unique situation where people probably didn't get out of their cars. The biggest obstacles or challenges, you, like many small towns, have houses that need demolition or removal. Having more young people stay or move to the town, and my argument with Ben Winchester would be that you're looking to make it such an appealing town that people move to it. And I think you're on the way there. And lawn care. They said in one parting remark that lawn care was a challenge. 6 months from now, what will you remember? Great food, friendly, helpful people, the magnificent historic courthouse, how well they've taken care of their older buildings, roads with beautiful trees that will change in the fall, City Hall, lots more businesses than our town of similar size. And for those visitors, you probably were pretty amazed at the difference between very similar sized towns and the number of businesses. So here are my recommendations after seeing what we've seen. Update the city website. Any articles that are posted and dated 2017, make this look out of date. The events don't link to anything. Add links to healthcare and include the travel time to those healthcare options. And I'm not talking about Dr. Benton, but just basically Fort Scott or whatever the appropriate places would be that people would travel to. School info should reflect the interests of potential students. Why do you love your schools? Tell us. So I offer this thanks to the people who were on your visiting team who made it possible, and hope that you'll set some next steps for a group discussion. And as always, K-State Research and Extension is here if you need us, and I hope you'll call on us. I'm going to spend a little time here on some resources that any of you might take the opportunity to access. Mound City, I don't believe is a current Kansas Pride community, but its Pride has existed for 50 years at K-State Research and Extension, and it helps communities basically organize to preserve, create, or improve for their future, and the opportunity for people to plan for their ideal community. I teach grant writing workshops, and those have gone virtual now, so we can host a online grant writing workshop so that you can bring more resources in to help you to achieve your goals. I alluded to these First Friday calls. Every first Friday of the month, Ben Winchester was on that call. Becky and Deb have been on this call. The SBA gives us lots of good resources. We want to connect businesses and communities with the resources that will make them successful. And this is one of those. This is Becky and Deb, and I highly recommend that you subscribe to their weekly newsletter. They don't overwhelm you with information. Almost always I get some little tip. Becky is from Alva, Oklahoma, and Deb is from Webster City, Iowa. They're two very small towns. They know your small town. They're not some fancy collaborator. They really know your small towns, and their research is your small towns. And look at this. They had a piece on Zoom towns. You know, as the pandemic approached, it being rural in Kansas, being in a small town, made a pandemic look pretty easy, as long as you have internet. And so she has an article here that tells us that Americans under age 30 are the only group whose top desired place to live is not rural. And for those people, rural was number 2, even for them. Now that people have a choice, they assert that millions of them are planning to move. This is, as one person says, as one source says, the pivot to remote work is the biggest, fastest transformation in the labor market since the World War II mobilizations. And we can move beyond. I mean, if I can live an hour away from K-State, you can now move 2 or more hours away, knowing that you only have to show up on occasion for work. So this housing issue, housing and internet become an even bigger issue. If you can solve that, then we believe people will come. And so Becky and Deb host a monthly Zoom call. They've made them shorter than ever because they believe people don't want a long recording. And they're really good. There's a small fee to them. But once you've paid the fee, then they encourage you to watch them with others and get more ideas together, stimulate the synergy of conversation. And then collaboration between businesses. I used to have a page here that talked about Atchison, Kansas, where there was a marketing professional who would convene all the businesses in town and, for what they called brown bag networking. But this can be done with just 2 businesses or a few businesses. Just get together for coffee and calendars and talk about what's going on in your town. This was a very recent article from the Topeka Capital Journal in January about Maple Hill, Kansas, population 600, and 2 businesses just collaborated their social media and their hours for the benefit of both. The more we do together, the more we'll thrive. The Kansas Department of Agriculture will work with your community to find the best opportunities for growth. For your grocery store's benefit, the Kansas Healthy Food Initiative is at K-State and has lots of different resources to offer you. And finally, come back to people like me, community vitality specialists at K-State that really want to help you thrive. So thank you for your attention, and I look forward to hearing what you decided to do with your first impressions data.